Hello and welcome to the Empowered Self podcast. I'm your host, Krystal, and today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by a very special guest whose story and presence are as grounding as they are inspiring. Lucy Cronly is a life coach, speaker, and the author of The Right Choose, a journey of self-discovery and meaningful connections. With a background in social care and a deep passion for helping others, Lucy brings empathy and curiosity, her true superpowers, into every space she enters. She is known for her unique heart, head and gut approach, helping people connect with their inner wisdom, build resilience and live with more clarity, connection and confidence. Lucy's philosophy is simple but profound. When we become our own best friend, we always have someone kind, compassionate, and honest by our side. I hope and I know today's conversation will leave you feeling just that. More connected, more seen, and a little more empowered. Lucy, I'm so grateful you're here. I know this conversation might take us through some tender places, but also some incredibly powerful ones. And I know that your story will speak directly to the hearts that need to hear it. Before we dive in, how are you feeling stepping into this conversation today?
I'm excited to step into our conversation today, Krystal. I'm very glad for the welcome that you've given me into the space, and I'm curious to see where the conversation might go today as well.
Brilliant. So first of all, let's take a little look before things change. What was life like for you at that time? You worked in social care for many years, but I'm curious to know what drew you to that path and what were you learning about people and yourself during that chapter in your life?
I'd worked in social care for a very long time, and it was absolutely my passion. Young people who were in struggle and having difficult times, who were away from family and who needed care, and needed good adults in their lives to help them with the struggles that they had. Not to take over a parenting role, but to actually be alongside them in their struggles. And I was drawn to it because I had thought about nursing, but I didn't like the medical side of it. I much preferred the people side of caring for people. And that was what drew me into social care, was that caring for people and being with people in struggle.
And I suppose then life shifted for you in ways you could have never expected. I know you've spoken courageously about some incredibly rather painful experience. I know from earlier conversations you experienced a traumatic assault, something that no one should have to endure. And if you're comfortable, would you share how that impacted you and what healing looked like in the early days for you?
Yeah, I think when the assault first happened, it happened very quickly, very unexpectedly. I would have always been somebody who had been very conscious of what was happening around me, and would have always sought to look after the young people and steer them to safer places. But it all happened so very quickly that I didn't realise even how badly injured I was when it happened. So my intention was to calm the space back down, to settle everything back down, because I was manager of the centre as well. I was caring for staff as well as young people. So it actually took a little while to realise the extent of my injury. And I continued to work for a little while afterwards because I thought that I had just pulled muscles, or there was something not quite as bad having happened, even though I was dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and not sleeping and trying to manage pain medication and all kinds of different things. So I was continued to try and juggle and strive to keep the show on the road. But it took a while to actually realize that just wasn't going to work, which went completely against the grain for me and how I operated. So that was the first, I think, difficulties.
Okay.
To realize the extent of the injury.
Yeah, and working in social care, I suppose just from my own experience dealing with social workers, it is a difficult environment to work in, particularly when you're caring for others. But I'm sure the people in your care really appreciated the support, even though you said that you have been assaulted in that environment. But I suppose for me anyway, there's sometimes a quiet moment after all that chaos and after all the healing process where we start to find those tiny pieces of ourselves again. Do you remember, I suppose, after all that healing and all that care and with the health situation at that time, do you remember how picking yourself up was for you and how was it to begin again?
Yeah, I suppose I was out of work, first of all, for an initial. Well, I stayed in work for a while, first of all, and then realised that actually I was going to have to step out of work because I needed surgery and I needed further care. And that even of itself was a difficult thing. It was the physical process of actually trying to get better. And then there was recovering from surgery, and then there was trying to get back to work. So I went back to, instead of a residential setting, I went back to a day setting. So I tried to do that. But the more I tried to push, the more my body was saying, you're not able to do this. So it took quite a period of time. And it was then when I realized there was even more damage. It was my shoulder and my neck that were injured. So then I ended up having cervical spine surgery. And then after that, it was really, my surgeon said to me, you cannot keep going at this pace. And it was that moment that just made me stop and say, okay, what am I going to do? And I panicked a little bit because the thought of not going back to work was, I can't do this. What am I going to do? But I knew I had all the physical limitations of my injury. So I really felt very at sea in all of that. But then it was, well, actually, let's turn this and try and create opportunities. So it meant I had time. And that was something I'd never really had before in my life. So there was a gift of time that came with stepping back from work. So into that, I was able to put further study. And I love study. I think I'm endlessly nosy. I think that's what keeps me in that learning space. So and one thing tends to lead me to another, to another, to another. I started doing lots of online courses because there's huge accessibility now in terms of learning and learning from home. So even though I had the physical restriction of not being able to get out of the house, I wasn't really able to drive. There was lots of things like that I wasn't able to do. But actually, I could go on my computer and I could learn. And then that brought me into the coaching space. So then I studied coaching and added that into things. I also went back into UCD and I did leadership, creativity and innovation. I did my studies there. And then that led to me doing a project there, which then led to me writing my book. So it was like sometimes when the push to get back to where you were is just not happening, to actually look at, well, what actually am I grateful for? What do I have? And what I had was time. So it was, how was I going to use that time? I mean, I could use the time to be upset about what had happened. And yes, I did take some time to do that. But it was also about how can I be productive with this time? So that was when I was able to jump into all kinds of learning spaces. And that was what I did. I think that was the real light for me in all of the retiring from work and managing my injury and managing the physical limitations. And I suppose the other thing that happened while I was managing my injury was one of my sons, who was 11 at the time. He's a big grown-up fella now, but he was 11 at the time, and he was diagnosed with cancer. So that changes the perspective entirely in it all as well, and it changes even the everyday changes when something like that comes in. It's like, what can we do now in the moment? You have to live in the moment of what can I do next? The bigger picture is too scary in some ways, so you have to live in the moments. So I suppose all of those learning pieces of the living in the moment, of how do you use your time, of what opportunities are there, and what are you grateful for? I suppose they were the things that kind of held me at the time.
Okay. And I suppose it's inspiring to hear, like, out of that incident of assault in the workplace, and having your son with cancer as well during that time, or around that time, that you were able to pick yourself up and use that time wisely and do all these courses, which led to a career in empowering others. But I'm just wondering, like, how did you manage family life as well as the college and learning and developing yourself in the professional space as well, and just trying to balance everything, especially when you're still healing from injuries?
I suppose that's the key, isn't it? It's the balance. It's the what can I do today? It's about planning out each day. It's not so having a bigger plan of kind of your end goal, but looking at what you can do, be it small steps or big steps. Some days you can do big steps, some days it's small steps. Some days family needs attention, some days your study needs attention, some days there's space for different things. So it's about what in the day can you create space for. I suppose it brought me to those kind of questions to look at creating a balance in that. And I'm not saying I always got it right, but I suppose that was kind of where I went from with it. And the other thing, I suppose, that has always been very central to me with family is I lost my own mum when I was very young. I was 6 when my mum passed away. So, and she died when she was 28. So I've always felt like the joy of the time that I have with my own sons. I have 3 sons, and again, they're grown up now. It's really scary to think. I feel like they're the same age as me, but they're not. They've grown up so quickly. Like, they're 27 and 22 and 21 now. So all of the time that I have with them is so precious. So it's how I use that well. And when they were younger, we spent lots of time and had lots of adventures together. And I suppose their life changed as well when I was injured, because we would have always been out and about and in the park and going for an adventure, going somewhere, doing something. So life changed for them too. So it was how we would spend our time together. That changed. So lots of things changed and became different. And I think it's to not get into better or worse, but it's just different. So it's how you use your time well, given the limitations that everybody has within the family, and what we do and how we plan for future things. Like when my son Owen was really sick, when we were in the hospital, and we spent lots and lots and lots of time in hospital, very long days. So I started to knit, and that was something that I'd done with my mother when I was very young. So she taught me how to knit. And again, that was her time that she was able to give me when she was really very sick. So I used to sit beside her and she taught me how to knit. So I had that, and it was always a connection to her knitting. So I started to knit furiously when we were in the hospital. And my sister suggested, why don't you make hats and we'll sell them at craft fairs? So I said, okay. And then it was, if we do that and we save the money, then we can do something when Owen's finished treatment. He was facing 3.5 years of chemo. So we knew at the end of that we'd have some money saved and we could possibly do something. So there was suggested that we might do a trip to New York. So again, I set about knitting and then making hats and making tea cozies. So instead of time in the hospital being measured by the time that was there, instead it was measured by how many tea cozies can you make in that day, ma'am. And like, if you sell the tea cozies at €15, okay, so instead of it being like 9 hours in the hospital, we were 3 tea cozies, which was €15 in the hospital. Do you know what I mean? So it changed the narrative that we had. So it made time in the hospital feel like we were working towards a bigger goal, which was a trip that we would do when he would finish treatment. So it's about finding, again, ways of using your time to do what you can within the parameters of what you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love the fact that when you're in a situation in hospital and the days can seem long and waiting for the doctors to come back with test results and tell you the latest updates, that you found a lovely novel way to change the focus a bit into doing something more productive, something to pass the time. And all the while your son was learning new entrepreneurial skills while in hospital, which gave him a new purpose and kind of focus as well, to know that there was a trip at the end of it when all the lovely hats were sold as well. So I suppose, like, you know, that with the new skills, and I suppose having a wonderful attitude as well in hospital, not dwelling on the fact that, you know, I'm sick, I need to, you know, there's doctors, there's nurses around. It kind of gave it a different side to it, something more positive to focus on, that when he gets out of hospital, that there was a family trip planned with the profits of the hats as well. So how did your son find the knitting? Was it hard for him to pick up, or?
Well, no, he didn't knit. It was me knitting, and he was just offering instructions.
As a project manager.
and suggesting further speed to get there. But we ended up, I think we made nearly €3,000 knitting hats and baby blankets and all kinds of different things, because I got lots of requests then from people to make different things. So it all kind of grew legs then. And of course, the trip grew legs then as well. So we ended up doing, we flew into Los Angeles and we did a road trip in a camper van from Los Angeles across the States to New York, and then flew home from New York. We did that over about 3.5 weeks. So it was something that we then looked forward to. Even though times were really tough, there was a plan. There was something that we were working towards. Again, small steps some days, bigger steps other days. And that, like I said, changed the focus of what was happening. And, you know, there were scary days, and there were days when things were very frightening happening in the hospital, when we were very worried about what was happening with him, when he hit some really tricky spots in his treatment. But then it became, well, what can we do right now to be happier? You know, because there's always something you can do to be happier. So, and sometimes that's just making a cup of tea, or, you know, kind of having a hug, or it's just the small things to just connect with yourself, to create a little bit of time, to be grateful for something. And that can just change the focus of the fear and the upset of what's happening. And I suppose that's something that I learned, those very small spaces, how you can really change something in your thinking with those.
Yeah, and, you know, knowing from my own personal experience as well, and for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to know what to do when you're in the thick of things. Life does throw us a lot of curveballs. We end up in situations that are most of the time not of our own making. And they could be quite scary, and they could be quite challenging and cause a lot of discomfort and upset and all those unhealthy kind of emotions as well. But I suppose, like, you know, with someone who's in the thick of it, what would you want them to know that you wish someone would have said to you when you were at your lowest points? I know you talked about the little things like the cups of tea and the hugs, but what is it, you know, I suppose, that we could hold on to, or something that to just keep our heads up when we're going through difficult times?
I think, you know, asking for help. is one of the things that it can be very hard to do, I think, in some ways, asking for help, because you feel like you're burdening another person. But I always think about, if somebody asks you for help, if you flip it, if somebody asks you for help, there's a privilege in somebody asking for help. I always feel very privileged when somebody asks, can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's that there's a gift on both sides when you ask somebody for help. There's a gift in the person giving the help, and there's a gift in somebody receiving the help. And there's a connection to another person. And I think connecting to another person is something that can stabilize us when we're really struggling. So it's about that reach out to ask for help, and not to be afraid of that. That, like, I remember we were in Barrettstown one day. We were a weekend in Barrettstown, and I was running around trying to look after my 3 boys, figure out what I was going to eat as well. That kind of flurrying around when you're not in the best of state. We'd spent a lot of time in the hospital over that time, and I was quite anxious and quite kind of het up on myself. And one of the carers that they have down there, which are the people that kind of help out for the weekend, came over to me and said, do you want a cup of tea? And I kind of went, what? And she said, you stay there and I'll make it for you. And I remember I started to cry at the idea that somebody else was going to just do something for me. But it wasn't that she was just doing something for me. It was actually that she'd seen my distress. And that was actually what she was responding to. And it was what she could do was not really helpful in one way if you just think about it. But it actually, I was seeing, and that was what held me in that time, if that makes sense. So I suppose that is something that I feel that never underestimate the power of small things with other people, of saying something that you see to somebody, saying something kind, saying something to offer help or to offer a kindness at a time, even when people are like, I don't know, I was very approachable that day because I was in a flurry, but somehow I was seen and somehow held. So it's how we can see and hold each other at those difficult times, and how we can pass that on, learn it and hold it.
And sometimes I believe a little kindness goes a long way. It touches the other person a lot more deeply than people realise. People are all going through their own stuff that people don't talk about, and sometimes we can pick up on the body language or maybe something someone says or the tone of voice, but some people don't give it away with their body language and things they say. And, for one thing, for me, be kind to people regardless, because it does go a long way, and you don't know what's going on for other people beneath the surface. Exactly. So a gentle word or a kind word or even a smile really does go a long way to light up someone else's life, even for just 5 minutes, 15 minutes. But it's nice to know that people care about people. And I think in this digital world that could be lost sometimes. But I do love it when someone says hello, even when they're just out walking a dog, and when you meet across your own walking journey. But there's just so many little things, and all these little things add up to acts of self-care for people as well. They may not know they might need it at the time, but when they do come, they're very welcoming for a lot of people. But they may not know how to reciprocate that kindness back, or they may not know what to say. They might be taken off guard, but that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, I think, but as you're saying there, like if you say hello to people as you're walking along, and somebody doesn't say hello back, that's nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
That's to do with how that other person is in that moment. So if they're not able, for whatever is going on in their head or their heart or their body or, their mind, whatever's going on, if they're not able to say anything back to you, the fact that you've said hello still stands in the kindness that it was. and in that bid for connection that it was. But maybe somebody just wasn't able to reciprocate. But that's about how they are. And I think it's about having an empathy for whatever's happening for them that they're not able to reciprocate. And sometimes maybe they're the person who needed you to say hello most.
Absolutely, because we don't know the after effect saying hello or smiling at someone has for someone long after they've been in your presence. So kindness is very important in whatever shape or form. It really does touch someone beneath the surface. We just don't know how, but it can light up their day in a different shape or form for them. And it's always nice to be nice, as my gran always said to me. It's nice to be nice. Lucy, thank you very much for sharing your story, and it's been so inspiring to hear how you've come out through an assault in work. It was with social care, and then your son having cancer, and how he turned that. I suppose those moments in hospital into more positive, productive ones as well, and getting a holiday at the end of it as well. And it's so wonderful to hear what inspires people to empower other people as well, particularly with your own career now in life coaching and through your book, The Right Shoes, which I have read, by the way. Thank you so much for the book. But it's fascinating now that I'm looking down at my own shoes and asking myself, what shoes am I wearing today? And, you know, we all go through life wondering about our own journeys and where we'll end up. And I suppose we all have our own journey to take in life. And sometimes it's knowing whether, you know, what shoes am I wearing today? Some people, it might be, what hat am I wearing today? Because I'm always thinking I'm someone that wears many hats, particularly with the work I do and things that go on in my own life. But with hats, there are shoes. We have many different shoes for many different things. And I suppose for me, it's nice to reflect on how far we've come, but also to look at where we are in the present moment and where we might want to be tomorrow as well, but not necessarily 5 years down the line, but maybe just the day after tomorrow even. But as you sit here talking to me at the moment, not only with wisdom, but with such a warm strength in everything that you have shared, what does empowerment mean to you today as you continue to empower other people, knowing that you've been through a long journey yourself with your own lived in truth?
Well, for me, I think it's about actually living true to your values. And again, as we've spoken about kindness, it's about being kind to yourself first and foremost. And that's the idea of being your own best friend, that you're kind, empathetic, but you hold yourself accountable. So it doesn't give you a free for all. You know, a good friend will always say, hang on a minute, you know, you need to step back a little bit from and look at what you're doing. So it's about being able to hold yourself accountable in that way. But if we want to say that we're a kind person, we have to start by being kind to ourselves to make it fully true. Because if we talk badly to ourselves, now we all do that. We all have that inner voice that goes, and what are you doing? What do you think you're at? Do you know what I mean? I don't know why you're showing up here. You haven't a clue. You know, all those different things that we say to ourselves. So we're not going to actually stop that, I don't think. And I wouldn't suggest to people to go about stopping it. I'd say catch it when it happens and say, hang on a minute. Would I say that to somebody I care about? I care about myself. So therefore I need to say something different. So it's about catching it and saying something different that aligns with your values. And I think that allows you then to live more authentically to your values. So that for me is really what empowerment is. It's being your own best friend and holding yourself accountable in that way and living true to your values. Like we were saying earlier, even if people don't reciprocate the way you'd like them to, that's about where they're at in themselves. It's not about what you've offered. It's about their ability to receive it.
Yeah, And I think we do need to be open to receive in order to live our authentic self and live by our own values as well.
Yeah.
Lucy, thank you so much for joining me today. Your heart, head and gut approach is such a beautiful way to remind us that we already hold the wisdom we seek, and that being our own best friend might be the most radical act of self-love and accountability. Your words today have lit something real and tender in myself, and I know our listeners will feel that too. So thank you for reminding us also that courage doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers, and still it can move mountains bit by bit. And thank you so much again. And if people were to try and connect with you, where would they find you, or what would be the best place to connect with you on?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so you'll get me on LinkedIn. I have my own website, and that's LucyCronly.com or .ie, either works. Or you get me on Gmail, lucy.cronly@gmail.com. And I suppose then there's my book, you can get that. That's on Amazon. It's The Right Shoes. So that's kind of a story of, and I suppose just where that story comes from is, it's the idea that we can't always choose the path that we're on, but we can choose the shoes that we wear on that path. So that's kind of the idea of that. So you can, all those things are there and available, and I'd be happy to hear from anybody if they'd like to reach out.
Thank you again, Lucy. It's been a real gift having you here. To all of you listening, thank you for being part of the Empowered Self podcast. If Lucy's story touched something in you today, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs a little inspiration right now. And you can also feel free to connect with Lucy on the social media and the website that she mentioned there earlier as well. Also, you can follow our subscriber if you get your podcasts, and come say hi over on Instagram at Krystal Empowered Self, or on Facebook at the Empowered Self podcast. I'll be back next week with more honest, heartfelt conversations to support your journey. Until then, be gentle with yourself, and remember, your empowered self is within you.